As the sound of the clash faded, the two remaining assassins rushed forward, aiming to land a decisive blow. But little did they know, they were the ones walking straight into a trap. Jin effortlessly flicked his wrist, sending the two of them crashing into each other, their teeth and blood mixed in a chaotic mess. Oh my god, what the hell is going on? That was probably the only thought running through the mind of the last remaining person still controlling the traps. A shadow suddenly appeared in front of them, right after that thought crossed their mind. Wait, I surrender. Yeah, sure. Surrender it is. A loud crash followed, and part of the roof of the inn was torn apart. In just a few seconds, the showdown between the young swordsman and the three rookie assassins from the Anonymous Association was over. Take this. Jin casually tossed a bag of money he had just stolen toward the old innkeeper. I'm not the kind of guy who likes to owe anyone. The innkeeper, though impressed by Jin, was still surprised by what had just happened. I never imagined you'd be able to handle those high-ranking trainees like that. It's ridiculous. Just a few days ago, someone like me, someone at the middle rank, thought I might actually succeed, Jin said with a bitter laugh. Ignoring the old man's words, Jin turned and prepared to leave. I'm really leaving this time. But just as expected, he couldn't get away that easily. Another arrow shot toward him, but Jin's sword effortlessly shattered it. Traps, arrows. Who's behind all this? So boring, he muttered. Just as he finished speaking, a sudden unknown downpour hit out of nowhere, catching Jin by surprise. He quickly jumped and kicked his legs, leaping up to the roof of the inn, managing to avoid the rain. He thought to himself, who keeps targeting me over and over. Well, it looks like there's no choice now. Instead of running away, it's better to find a higher ground and go after the enemy. Why live far for trouble? A group of assassins, armed to the teeth with swords, knives, and all sorts of weapons just like last time. With quick, basic sword strikes, they were no different from the last group. After the ambush passed, more arrows continued to rain down. The constant battles with the young soldiers and avoiding traps were seriously starting to take its toll. Dan, how many of them are there? Meanwhile, up at the highest point, while his younger brother was running for his life, Yoma sat back, laughing like she just won the lottery. Just as I thought, my little brother sure is adapting faster than I expected. Those 4 days of scouting weren't wasted. Well, I guess I'll have to work hard now. She paused for a moment, then added, but if he's weaker than me and ends up dying during training, that'd be a shame. But oh well, losing your life in training happens all the time. Hope you can survive this, little brother. Hours passed, and the chase came to an end. The ground was littered with the remains and corpses of the assassins. Clearly, only one person was still standing. Jin Runcandel, you must feel something strange right now. Those rookie assassins earlier were well organized, which means they were likely acting on orders from someone. He promised himself that no matter who that bastard was, he'd find him and teach him a lesson. As he was thinking, suddenly, a piece of white paper appeared above his head. It seems things are going better than I thought. The person who could mobilize a whole group of assassins from the Anonymous Association is none other than Sister Yona. This is actually even better. Now I have a reason to demand what I want after enduring all this frustration. Like the antidote wine, for example. There are so many poisons in the world, and even the Runcandel family's gifted bodies are useless against them. But with this antidote wine, it's a special elixir passed down only to the best assassins in the Anonymous Association. Those who drink it are practically immune to all poisons. Of course, the youngest among the top assassins of the Anonymous Association, Sister Yona, also has it. She was born with a natural resistance to toxins, so she doesn't need to drink it. Unfortunately, she was tricked by Sister Anne and lost it. Naturally, Anne is on Joshua's side, so Jin has to get it before it becomes a resource for the enemy. Taking away whatever is useful and weakening the enemy for the future is absolutely necessary. But that's a problem for later. First, I have to get through Yona's tricks. The next 2 days would be all about playing her games and facing her challenges. No sooner had the words left Jin's mouth than a chain attached to a dagger shot out, grabbing his sword's blade. It was controlled by a nearby assassin in training. Of course, this wouldn't trouble a skilled swordsman like Jin. He grabbed the chain, swung it forcefully, and exposed the assassin. Now you probably realized how this is going to end, huh? With one powerful swing, he destroyed a nearby house, knocking the assassin unconscious right on the spot. It seemed like the poor guy had enough, but Jin wasn't done. He flew toward him and delivered a swift kick, sending the assassin crashing through several walls, his body crumpling as he let out agonizing groans. Jin noticed something. Behind a nearby door, his gaze sharpened as he spoke up. Hey, stop hiding. Come out. You two don't look like the anonymous rookies. I'm guessing you're outsiders like me, right? I've been having a blast for the past 2 days with this little game of cat and mouse, so you better show yourselves while I'm still in a good mood. Just then, 2 familiar faces, those of comedians, peeked out from behind the door. Anyone else in there other than these two clowns, Dant and Veridin? Holy crap, how annoying are these guys? What the hell are you two doing here? The shouting continued back and forth, with the three of them unable to reach any sort of agreement, especially Veridin, who complained that because of Jin, he had to dip into the black fund just to get his hands on an anonymous badge. As for Jin, he was just wondering why these two idiots showed up asking questions, and then he smelled trouble. It's because we were thinking about those nights fighting side by side with you, of course. On top of that, the two guys had already spent all their money buying anonymous badges. Long story short, now Jin has to take care of these two comedians. About that, of course, someone like Jin with his sense of justice won't have a problem. But in return, what are you two going to do to prove you're worth that money? Dante quickly understood what was going on when he saw a wave of assassins rushing in. I get it now. He had just drawn his sword when a huge hole appeared in the roof of the building. So, what do you think, Mr. Jin? Is this enough? Obviously, the chaotic scene below also caught the attention of the mastermind, Yoma. What's going on with these kids? Looks like the game just got a lot more interesting. After seeing the mess Dant caused down below, Yoda's voice echoed from behind. Oh, so it's you, Owl. It's known that this man goes by the nickname Owl, Anonymous King, ranked 85th. Listen, Yona, even you can't tolerate another disturbance like this. Do you have any idea how many cadets' homes have been destroyed because of this? Before Yona could even finish her sentence, she suddenly jumped up and started blaming the kids below. That's not important right now, Mr. Owl. I was having fun playing with my little brother, but some idiots showed up out of nowhere and ruined it. Dan, who dares to interrupt Yona like this? As soon as Yona finished speaking, Owl narrowed his eyes and followed the direction of her pointing finger. According to her explanation, the person up front was her little brother, and the ones behind him were the troublemakers. As expected from a professional assassin, Owl instantly recognized the two boys as the heirs of the Zippel and Heron families. If anything happened to them, this whole assassin organization could be wiped out in an instant. But Yona didn't seem to care about that. While Owl was still thinking, she quickly jumped down and said she would take care of the situation herself. Hey, wait a minute. If you go, they'll end up dead. Well, that was my plan anyway. Those bastards interrupted my game with my little brother. It looked like things were about to get dangerous for Veradin and Dante. Why not? This is the first time my little brother has come to find me, and yet those idiots have to ruin it. Hurry up and let me go handle them. If you're that determined to kill them, why don't we make it a game? Owl said. A game where their lives are the stakes, starting tonight and lasting until dawn. 3 rounds in total. Send out a real assassin, not some rookie. If they die, you win. If they survive, you lose. As he spoke, Owl let go of Yona's collar. But if that's the case, doesn't that mean the chances of the youngest one dying along with them would go up too? If possible, I really don't want the youngest to die. I had so much fun playing with them over the past 2 days, so I guess there's no other choice, huh? She had to watch the 3 of them play together while she just stood there and watched. Obviously, Owl's taunt had worked, forcing Yona to join the game he had set up. But no matter what happened, Owl was not allowed to interfere. I'll be the one to choose the assassin. Yeah, you don't need to worry about that. But do you know how many houses were destroyed yesterday? 37 in total. It was because you sent those recruits to play with your little brother. Don't forget to write a self-reflection report about it. And of course, she hadn't. The way Yona slammed the door was enough to show just how arrogant she was. Once Yona left, Owl breathed a sigh of relief. At least he had prevented Yona from taking matters into her own hands. If those 3 kids died here, the Anonymous organization wouldn't be able to live in peace with the 3 families involved. Things were already out of control. It was time to act quickly. The next morning at some inn in Sanel, as soon as they heard that they wouldn't be attacked in the morning, Veradin and Dante immediately fell asleep. Meanwhile, Jin sat nearby, observing the 2 clowns. First, Dante. His body was still as weak as ever, but his swordsmanship had improved significantly. After learning the secret techniques of the Heron family, he must have leveled up. But more importantly, there was that bastard Veradin. Jin still couldn't understand what was going on in his head. The damn genius was almost untouchable in his previous life, now looked like a coward. And on top of that, he came to find him for no reason, then asked to buy some food. After shaking his head in frustration, Jin suddenly remembered something. He needed to quickly come up with a way to use them while also protecting them from Yona. She was definitely going to send stronger assassins soon. As he was deep in thought, an unfamiliar foot stepped in front of him. Jin froze, realizing someone was standing right in front of him. He hadn't felt any movement as the person approached. Could this be the best assassin from Anonymous? Then he calmed himself and started thinking. As far as Jin knew, other than Yona, there was no reason for any of the other anonymous assassins to come after him. He then introduced himself. I'm the youngest son of the Runcandel family. You must be the 85th king of Anonymous. You don't seem scared at all. Courage will certainly help you out, the man said with a slight smile. Lord Chiron may be old, but he managed to get his hands on a rare gem. However, you recognize me, and yet you still refuse to change your posture. Seems a bit much, don't you think? In response, Jin admitted that he was just pretending to be brave, fearing that his life might be taken. Moreover, the Runcandel family never bows down to death. Despite his tough words, Jin was mentally scrambling, trying to figure out why this man had appeared. Could it be something related to Sister Yona? It seemed like Jin had figured something out because he spoke up. But just a moment later, a numb sensation spread through his head, making Jin realize that death was very close. In Samel, even Lord Chiron has to speak carefully. So how dare a brat like you bring up Yona? The man said, grabbing Jin by the throat. A disrespectful kid like you caused all this chaos, and now you're acting arrogant just because you have Yona backing you up. Jin had no idea why mentioning Sister Yona had set the man off so violently, but he couldn't figure out the reason either. You think tearing you apart right now would ease my anger? It wouldn't, but out of respect for Lord Chiron, I'll spare you this time, the man growled. After hearing those words, Jin understood what the old man had been doing. It was clear that he had intentionally mentioned his father as an excuse to let him live. Well, keeping his life was the most important thing. Jin quickly knelt down, apologized, and made it clear he was willing to accept any punishment. Starting tonight, real assassins wearing white masks will target you. Before Jin could ask anything else, Owl spoke up. I don't care what happens to you, but those two kids sleeping over there cannot die. Listen closely and follow my instructions. Jin, still confused, responded, Why send real assassins instead of cadets? Is this some kind of punishment for me? Owl explained, This is a game. Everything is under Yona's control. The goal of this game is the lives of those two. As Jin listened, his mind only grew more puzzled. He wondered why Owl was getting involved in Yona's game, and why he had to cooperate with him in such a complicated way. Don't tell me even Anonymous King can't stop Yona. What kind of role does she play in the Anonymous Association? The sun was directly overhead now. According to Owl's instructions, the three of them needed to stick together and find the center of the castle. Doing so would at least give them a chance to survive for a day. Furthermore, by the morning of the day after tomorrow, they had to find a way to get Viradin and Tant out of the castle. So you mean I'm the one who should stay behind? If I do that, does that put my life in danger? Instead of answering the question, the owl asked back, Do you want any kind of reward? Give me the elixir of all poisons, Jin replied. Of course not. The owl said with a grimace that explained even if Lord Chiron himself came here, it still wouldn't be possible. And so, they continued to discuss the matter for a while longer until the owl finally left. Their deal was kept secret with the condition that they had to save the two heads of the Zipple and Heron families. After all this, the owl said, I'll give you one last piece of advice. If we wanted to, we could kill anyone in the world. But do you know why we don't use our power carelessly? It's because the stronger the weapon, the more dangerous it becomes in the wrong hands. Jin responded, and if you use it carelessly, you'll end up causing even bigger problems for yourself. But if you already know that, the owl asked, then why bring up Yona? Despite asking, the owl was puzzled. Asterisk, could this kid really not know about his connection with Yona Asterisk? If that's the case, then his question earlier must have been just that. Nothing more than a simple question that made me angry enough to threaten him. After realizing his slip-up, the owl coughed a few times and said, Your answer was good. Now I'll be going. Then I'll see you again in 3 days, Jin said. As for Jin, according to the plan, he was supposed to send those two idiots back home in the next 2 days. But honestly, he thought, Asterisk, I don't have any reason to follow his orders, Asterisk. Lord Owl. And so, the day of escape for the three young men began. One of them said, Listen closely, both of you. Starting today, will be targeted by real assassins, not just military cadets anymore, so we need to stay focused. Dant and Viradin were confused. Why do we need to rush? It's barely evening and we haven't seen anyone yet. Of course, only Jin understood how dangerous the situation had become. When we were fighting candidates, we could feel them approaching the moment the sun went down, and by dusk, we'd already have daggers thrown at us. But right now, I don't feel anything. To be precise, Jin wasn't saying he didn't feel anything at all. He couldn't sense their presence directly, but he could tell something was coming. It was like the enemy knew everything about them. The difference between the cadets and real assassins was night and day. Meanwhile, up on a nearby castle, Yona was feeling quite excited, thinking her younger sibling was probably doing exactly what she expected. But in stark contrast to her cheerful face, Owl was filled with worry. Yona, I can't believe you sent out a high-level assassin first. Are you really planning to kill your own brother? Seeing Yona's innocent, almost guilty expression, Owl continued to explain Jin is pretty sensitive, so he started to run. But when they begin to attack, he'll be dead before he has a chance to do anything. Obviously, the two guys behind him aren't going to end up any better. That's not going to happen. Yona replied confidently, the youngest third eye is already half open. Yona didn't always speak up, but when she did, it was always enough to catch Owl off guard. He never expected that the youngest son of the Runcandel family would have his third eye awakened at such a young age. Yona went on, it might look like Jin is moving purely on instinct, but it's not like that. I'm sure he sensed something, even if it's just a little. The training over the past few days has helped open his third eye more, so his abilities are stronger than before. Owl couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Seeing Yona's expression shift completely, Owl fell silent. He'd never seen her react like this before. As for the guy below them, Jin Runcandel, maybe it was time to start setting a bit of expectation for him. At that moment, Jin below suddenly felt something. He quickly raised his hand to stop and called for the two men behind him to halt. In front of them, a cloud of smoke was rising from the ground. Sensing that something was off behind the smoke, Jin immediately turned around and grabbed Dan and Veridin, pulling them to run before they could even figure out what was going on. It was pretty clear now. The real assassins from Anonymous had arrived. The Mona rain of needles shot toward them. The first of the assassins revealed himself. Jin's quick head jerk left the assassin shocked. I can't believe a kid has reflexes like that. Jin's sword hilt was just in time to block the assassin's dagger strike. Can he sense my presence? Before the assassin could think any further, Veradin instantly cast a freezing spell, successfully trapping him in ice. Nice job, Veradin, Jin shouted, still celebrating with Dant and Veradin. Then he snapped at them. We don't have time to waste. And he was right. The instant the ice began to crack and the assassin moved again, it was clear that a level 6 spell wasn't nearly enough to hold off a true assassin. The assassin's hands were already full of needles, launching them toward the three of them. Jin had to fight tooth and nail just to keep moving while defending himself. He reminded them all urgently, we need to hurry. If we keep wasting time, the other assassins waiting for us will be here soon. We don't have the luxury of fighting every single one. Run straight to the target location. As Danth and Jin struggled, the comedian Veradin couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha, I didn't expect the Anonymous Association to be so weak. You guys claim to be assassins, but you can't even catch me. If I meet you, I'll toss this fool at you so you can see what a real assassin is like. Back to Jin, after a long chase, he started wondering why they were closing in on them. Why were they keeping their distance instead of following right behind? Don't tell him. Sure enough, as soon as the words left his mouth, his worst fear came true. An ambush had already predicted their escape route. Although they weren't hit with a fatal blow, the three of them were now surrounded by their enemies. Things were looking tough. Hey, Veradin, Jin turned and yelled, urging him to explain himself. Veradin quickly responded, I didn't expect things to go down like this either. Enough with the nonsense. Stop talking and get ready. Use your strongest magic. Heh, I guess it's time to get serious, huh? If that's the case, then help me stall for 10 more minutes. A burst of light suddenly pierced the darkness of Samuel. I need to focus to prepare this spell. Triple destruction, one with the fire. The assassin standing right below couldn't help but stare in awe, their eyes wide with surprise. That's some terrifying magic. With his memories from his past life, Jin immediately recognized what was happening. He couldn't believe it. He had actually learned it. This was the magic used by the previous head of the Zippel family, the one who earned the title of Queen of Magic 200 years ago. This was a spell that Ryle Zippel had only used once in his lifetime. Everyone had expected a huge display of power from Veradin, but life doesn't always go as planned. Jin. Veradin's desperate cry for help signaled something was wrong. At this rate, he'd be killed by the assassins before he could even cast his magic. Naturally, there was no way Jin would let that happen, but something felt off. There was only one assassin left, so where were the others? Where else could they be but with Dan Heron? Using his family's secret technique, the Asterisk Emperor's Sword Asterisk, the Dragon Sword style, Dante struck with his single move and wounded dozens of assassins surrounding him. Taking advantage of the distraction, Jin quickly took down the remaining assassin. Then Jin couldn't resist but glance at Dante's sword technique again. It was something he had never seen before. Dante must have used mana to create it, a secret technique that could be used for both defense and offense. Since their last encounter, it was clear that Dante had been training hard. Of course, there was also Veradin. Not only Dante, but Veradin had grown much stronger too. At his age, controlling such a large amount of mana was nothing short of extraordinary. Could he really use the legendary magic passed down through the Zippel family? The answer will come soon, but first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Of course not, guys. With a face that couldn't possibly be more embarrassed, Veradin loudly declared, sorry, Jin and Dante, looks like I messed up. Jin's expression was like, is this really the supposed genius sorcerer from his past life? Even the assassins couldn't help but admire Veradin's acting skills. His teammates did their best to hold off the assassins, but with Veradin only able to create a tiny flame like a newborn baby, everything was ruined. What are you standing around for? Run. Plan had failed. Dan picked up the comedian and left first, while Jin held off the assassins. What made it worse was that the clown Veradin didn't forget to throw in a few words of consolation. Sorry, Jin. It's been a while since I used that technique, so I probably messed it up. Heh. Shut up already. You're just saying a few words, but now there's blood everywhere. Who's gonna clean that up? Behind them, someone who seemed to be the leader shouted, everyone, block those two. Don't let them get away, even if it costs us our lives. If we let them escape, we all know what's coming. I heard Yona's going to personally train us again. An hour passed quickly, and with an expression that couldn't have been more confused, Yoma asked, Lord Owl, I have a question. Did you help them? It was strange. If you didn't help, how did they know to run to the safe zone? This place was the center of Samel, where special characters and the families of the assassins from the Anonymous Association lived. Back with Jin's group, after a long and exhausting chase, everyone was able to relax a little. It seemed the assassins had stopped attacking them for now. It was known that at the safe zone, unless there was an enemy invasion or an emergency, everyone was required to follow the tradition of not using weapons, no matter what happened. Hey Jin, how did you know about this? Is this some kind of test for you? Well, kind of, Jin replied casually. Meanwhile, at the other location, Owl stubbornly denied Yona's argument. More importantly, she had already signed the acknowledgement for her role in the sabotage. Ha ha ha, you're lying so blatantly, Yona said with a slight smile, her voice calm, but sending chills down Owl's spine. You're the one who broke your promise, right? So now it's my turn to take action, she added. King Owl, the 85th of Anonymous for him, Yona was even more precious than a daughter. She possessed unmatched talent that no assassin could ever match. People had given her many nicknames, like the one born to be an assassin or the goddess of death. At the very least, those who had witnessed the power lying dormant within her had spoken of it that way. She carried with her a blade soaked in chaos. As I said, I'll fight them myself. You broke your promise, so you're not allowed to interfere, Yona declared. Owl realized that there was nothing more he could do. Now he couldn't stop the girl anymore. All he could do was hope that Jin Runcandel would somehow help the next master of Heron and Zippel survive and get out of here. It was already getting late, and it was time for the two little boys with my younger sister to die. Will you come with me? At these words, Owl remained silent. He knew that Jin was smart enough to follow his plan. The kid surely understood how serious the situation was. While he felt a little guilty for letting Jin face Yona, there was no other choice. After all, he hoped Yona would go easy on him. She seemed to like her younger brother so much. Maybe, just maybe, she could prevent everything from happening if Jin just listened to him. But then, right after that, Owl was left with a huge question mark over his head when he looked at where the three boys had been hiding. Why were they still asleep? Heh, they're all gathered in one place. This is too convenient. Yona's deep, mocking laugh pulled Owl into a spiral of panic. Those damn brats had the nerve to interfere with her plans. How dare they talk and laugh with my younger brother when I haven't even had a chance to talk to him yet? Just as she mentioned the word kill, Yona suddenly noticed Jin doing something below that completely surprised her. Mr. Owl, why do you keep meddling in my business? Don't pretend like you don't know what's going on. As she spoke, Yona pointed directly at Jin, who was doing something strange down below. That light shining through the window, what my younger sibling is holding in their hand is none other than the claw of a silver dragon. In contrast to the loud argument happening above, down here, Jin was sweating bullets. Why hasn't anyone reacted to this yet? Could the plan be going wrong? Just as that thought crossed his mind, Jin heard a sound though faint. He quickly realized who it was. Behind him were none other than Yona and Mr. Owl. There was a chilling sense of fear, as though he could hardly feel their presence. Long time no see, Yona, Jin quickly greeted, and was also honored to meet the 85th Anonymous King for the first time. Of course, he wasn't stupid enough to admit he had been briefed by Mr. Owl the night before. Looking at the two comedians who were now fast asleep, Mr. Owl spoke up. It's not good for them to know too much, so I'll ask you directly. Where did you get this silver dragon's claw? Sir, this is from a silver dragon I met during my travels. She gave it to me as a gift. Owl continued, it seems Jin knows how to use it since he raised it like that just now. As far as I know, if you show this to an anonymous assassin, no matter the situation, the owner will survive. So in short, if you give it to us, your life will be safe. However, before handing over the dragon's claw, Jin wanted Owl to explain something to him. I'm curious, why are the people hunting the actual assassins and not just cadets? Does Yoma not trust me because I'm from the Runcandel family? Naturally, Yona was about to speak up to explain, but Owl stopped her. Let me handle this. I'll make it clearer. Though he said that in his mind, he was silently cursing the kid. He had already told Yona that he'd be the one to explain things to him. After a moment, Owl said, "It's simple. Yona and I made a bet. I bet that your friend would survive, and Yona disagreed. Thanks to you, I've won the bet. From now on, no anonymous assassins will follow you or harm you, including me and Yona. We'll keep this promise for the next 10 years. And as long as your family doesn't attack us, this decision won't be changed." The surprised expression when hearing the 10-year timeline was quickly wiped away by Jin. After all, this was good news because it removed a major variable. I no longer had to worry about being assassinated by the anonymous organization while competing with the other siblings. Lord Owl continued and then added a reminder. We'll talk about the reward you want later. For now, I'm sure the two of you have a lot to say to each other. This is the first time you two have met since you arrived at Samel. As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Owl vanished as quickly as a gust of wind, leaving the two sisters awkwardly standing there, unsure of what to say. Well, hey there, little sis. Yona was so proud earlier, but now she looks so humble. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a group of people dressed in black, likely assassins, were discussing the temporary flag bearer of the Runcandel family. They were completely shocked by how close he seemed to be with the next generation head of the Heron and Zippel families. Even Lord Joshua probably never expected this. It was clear there was some kind of connection between Yona and the temporary flag bearer. Since the matter was already discovered, new clues would likely surface soon. The assassin rank targeting him was steadily rising. While the reasons were unclear, it was undoubtedly some form of intense training. More importantly, since the master had warned that the temporary flag bearer must not die, everyone had to stay alert. When I returned to where the two sisters were, it seemed like everything had settled down. Yona shyly explained that she wanted her sister to become stronger, and that's why she had done it. There was no other intention behind it. Oh, so that's why you sent a bunch of assassins after me. When something gets too hard, you just give up, huh? Yona quickly turned around, changing the subject, and asked who the two boys were. Now that I think about it, who were they, she asked. Danth Heron and Veraden Zippel, Jin explained. One's from the Runcandel family, but is close with the Zippel and Heron families. My little sibling really is one of a kind, Jin added. He then wondered aloud whether Yona had reported this to the family, but Yona immediately denied it. Why would I do that? If I did, you'd at least get hurt, or worse, you might die. But isn't that what you wanted? If not, why would you send so many assassins? I'm going to ask again, why did you do this, Yona? Jin pressed. Yona replied, I just wanted to have fun with you. Oh, so you see me as a toy? Jin asked, his tone blunt, almost confirming his suspicions. Yona's response was a loud, shocked protest as she stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Jin was taken aback by the sudden emotion, confused by her tears, especially since assassins are trained to control their feelings. Why is she crying? What's going on? Jin wondered. Jin thought for a moment before asking directly, Yona, why do you have that expression? Aren't you supposed to be the best assassin? Yona replied, I never learned anything about controlling my emotions. When I first came to Anonymous, our mother said I was so good at killing that I didn't need to learn anything else. Jin asked, so, does that mean you killed someone before coming here? He couldn't help but wonder how a 12-year-old could do something like that. Yona answered, well, I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. At Storm Castle, my little cousin kept bothering me, so I killed him. Not long after that, the tutor who was supposed to teach me disappeared. Yona continued, even though there were other siblings at home and at Storm Castle, I was banned from eating with them or living like a normal child. I thought it was a punishment from our father, but it turned out that wasn't the case. As Yoda spoke, Jin seemed to realize that her natural talent for killing was probably the reason their father had sent everyone else away. Maybe he did it to prevent other younger children from losing their lives. While Jin was deep in thought, Yona suddenly laughed. Well, I'm lucky. At least now I get to talk to you. I don't really care where I get sent, but I do feel a little sad about not being able to see my brothers and sisters again. With those words, Jin's suspicions were confirmed. Sister Yona was far from normal. She felt no remorse at all for killing someone, but that didn't mean she was completely emotionless. At that moment, maybe this was the only way for their father to protect his other children. But was it really right to abandon his children like that? As for Yona, when she saw Jin's clenched fist, she was taken aback. Yona, are you angry at me for what I've done? Jin, no, that's not it. Have you ever thought about how unfair this is? Ever since we were kids, you've been treated like a tool for killing. In response, Yona didn't seem to understand her brother's words at all. Is that really a bad thing? If that's how you see it, I get it now. You haven't killed anyone yet. No wonder I've always felt like you were trying so hard not to kill anyone when you fought. But as for me, what could I have done? I was born like this. Jin pressed on. You were born like this? Were you the one who made a pact with the gods? Yona quickly dismissed Jin's question, but she didn't say anything else. Anyway, you don't need to know. And you have your own secrets too, don't you? If Yona hadn't said anything, Jin might have kept his calm. But now that she had, he couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. Asterisk does she know about my hidden weapons, asterisk. Yona, walking ahead, kept explaining her feelings. What I mean is there's something in my body that's afraid of you. Ever since I first saw you, something inside me started crying out. It said I should kill you. That confused me. And honestly, I like you so much that it's almost enough to overpower my instincts. All I want is for you to feel the same way about me. Jin, on the other hand, remained composed and replied, there's no connection like that between us. Seeing that the conversation wasn't going anywhere, Yona had a new idea. She offered him an antidote to all poisons as a kind of gift. If you agree to get closer to me, then it'll be yours. After all, the others came for it, so I'm sure you're no exception. But just as quickly as she spoke, Jin firmly rejected her, leaving Yona's small heart feeling like it had shattered. Even if you give me the antidote, my answer won't change. However, she tried again. Have you seen how bright the mood is tonight? Let's take a walk. I think through conversations like this, we build a real sibling bond. As she spoke, Jin extended his hand toward her. This must have been the first time anyone in her family had ever offered to do something like this for her. Jin, meanwhile, needed some time to sort through his thoughts. How should he treat this sister of his, someone who seemed both pitiful and deserving of blame? A few minutes later, outside the room, beneath the rubble of the city which had been destroyed over several nights, the two Runcandel sisters were taking a walk. Basically, all the assassins were under a curfew imposed by the anonymous king's orders. Yona pointed to somewhere in the distance and said it was probably where Jin would like. Actually, visitors aren't allowed there, but for you, it's different. Soon, they reached the base of a hill, and all they needed to do was climb a little higher. At the top, in front of them, was a whole new landscape filled with glowing flowers. Is this a blue rose? Jin asked. Yona confirmed, yes, it is. Even though they're usually considered weeds, they look beautiful when they absorb the moonlight. Did you know I really like them? No matter how often they're trampled on or how little water they get, they always survive. And even if they die, other flowers will quickly grow to replace them. As she spoke, Yona picked a bunch of flowers and handed them to Jin. This is my gift to you. Jin paused for a moment, then remembered something. This isn't the first time you've received blue roses in this life. Sometimes they're placed on the windowsill in the mornings. Perhaps Jin had forgotten that in a past life, there were times when someone had placed 2 flowers in her room. 2 flowers on the same stem. Now, Jin wondered if her older sister had already formed a connection with her from that previous life. As these thoughts crossed her mind, Jin quickly took the branch of flowers from Yona and asked, Sis, how have you been lately? The things we can't share with anyone else, please share them with me. Clearly Jin, the sly one, was carefully coaxing her innocent older sister onto a path of trouble. Just like that, Yona opened up and shared all her secrets. She even revealed that she had once thought about killing the anonymous king. When I was 14, after being scolded and forced to write an apology letter, I tried to assassinate him. I even tried 2 more times, but all of them failed. Just hearing that made Jin shiver. Trying to kill the anonymous king because he made her write a letter of apology seemed a little extreme. Then Yoda asked about the dragon claw that Jin had received. Who gave you the silver dragon's claw? Are you too close? Upon hearing that they were somewhat familiar, Yona immediately responded, I'll kill that dragon and pull all its claws out to use them. Jin knew Yona was joking, but it still sounded a bit dangerous. Jin smiled nonchalantly after listening to her sister's ramblings. I think you'd be better off running a flower shop than being an assassin. If you opened a shop in my territory, I'd probably stop by often. Of course, you can't kill your customers. Well, I have to go see the anonymous king now. Of course, Yona didn't let me go. If you leave, I'll kill you right on the spot, she said. I thought I'd have to serve Yona all night, but somehow, her goldfish memory kicked in and she suddenly remembered she had a mission to complete. Well, I'll say goodbye for now. I'm leaving first, so take your time, she said. With that, Yona jumped straight off the cliff to go handle her mission, leaving Jin staring after her in confusion. About half an hour later, at the anonymous king's location, he spoke. Looks like you've finished talking with Yona, and you know I've been waiting for you. Before we start, I have to ask, why didn't you follow my preparation plan in the game? But on the bright side, neither of the future heads of the family died, and I even got the silver dragon's claws, he added. Jin quickly explained that he'd been a bit disrespectful. It's not that I didn't want to get closer to you. I believe you and I want the same thing, at least for the next 5 years. I can delay Yoda's return to her family for that long. I'll come up with an excuse to make it happen. Obviously, the fact that a temporary flag bearer could pull something like this off made the Owl King a little skeptical. but Jin reassured him with his promise. The reason you gave was that Yona is perfect for running a flower shop. As you know, someone with as many emotions as she has isn't cut out to be an assassin. She's simply more skilled at killing than others. So, instead of being exploited by the family when she returns, I want her to be with people who can understand her better. I want her to be happy. Jin's heartfelt words quickly earned a nod from the Owl King. His request was simple, just this once. Jin wanted to receive help from the anonymous king as Jin Grey, not as Jin Runcandel. With that, he continued saying he would soon leave Samel with Dan and Veridin, so he wouldn't cause any further trouble for the king. Good then, now get out of my sight. 1 week later, in the Black Sea, Kashmir and Khan had arrived after a long journey. Kashmir was the one most worried. From what he knew, the Black Sea was chaotic, yet everything around here seemed strangely clean. But who else is here? In front of them stood some of the most famous figures on the continent, including the Owl King, the head of the Chiron family, and the leader of the Bao Guild. It looked like the next chapter of this story wasn't going to be easy for Kashmir. If things keep going like this, I might be done for. Talaris was worried because everyone was already here, Kashmir and the anonymous king too. Talking about the kid's marriage right now would be so awkward. The Ice Lord and the Noble Sword, if we bring up Yona and Jin now, it's going to be difficult. And as for Kashmir, well, it's no different for him. You must be here to talk about the engagement, Talaris, but who is that man over there? He was totally confused since everyone was such a big deal. One wrong move, and he could lose his life. Just then, the main character spoke up. Please have a seat. Kashmir, I'm sorry to call you here and then not welcome you properly. Understanding Kashmir's confusion about the stranger, Chiron explained that it was the anonymous king. The anonymous king? Oh, so that must be Owl from Anonymous. This might mean that young Master Jin has run into some trouble. But then Jin had only just arrived in Samel not long ago, so it seemed unlikely. What could have happened in such a short time? As Kashmir's sharp mind started piecing things together, Owl spoke up at the same time. Looks like you've already made arrangements, huh? Chiron didn't respond directly but turned to Kashmir. Wait a moment. I invited you here for a drink, but it seems we'll have to wait for these old friends to leave first. They also mentioned Jin coming to Samel. His reason for being here was to train, preparing for the possibility of being assassinated or poisoned. When Talaris heard this, she shot a suspicious glare and asked, why does my son-in-law keep going to such dangerous places? He's always traveling around like this. What if something happens to him? What would my daughter do then? On the other side, Owl explained why he was there. The truth is, I came to see you about something related to young Master Jin, but it seems this isn't the right place to talk about it, not with Noble Sword and the Archery Guild leader present. Still, Chiron insisted. The Archery Guild leader is one of the few people I consider a close friend, and Noble Sword is very discreet, so there's no problem. And so the conversation continued for hours, eventually wrapping up with a hearty laugh from Chiron, the head of the family. What's going on with the Silver Dragon's claws? Did you agree to some requests from the youngest? Chiron asked. Owl then explained that Jin had asked him to erase all records of his visit to Samel. More specifically, aside from the people living in the small kingdom, as well as the trainees and assassins, Jin didn't want anyone to remember the names Jin Grey or Jin Runcandel. After that, a bloody battle broke out. The Runcandel family's forces were nearly massacred in Samel as some of the best assassins. How dare you? Someone shouted. Anonymous isn't afraid of the Runcandel family's revenge. I don't know why you're doing this, but I'm sure our family head will. Before the sentence could finish, the captain's head was severed from his body. That's the summary of the whole situation. We've wiped out all the guards who were chasing the temporary flag bearer. It seems like that young flag bearer must have realized their presence, which is probably why he asked for it, Owl said. Chiron, after hearing this, wasn't really surprised. He just wondered aloud. Could it be that the kin is worried I'll make him take responsibility for them? With that, he lifted his hand to his chin and smiled lightly. Now I get it. The kid must have witnessed the purge, huh? If that's the case, don't worry about what happened. Even if you kill 100 people, it's no big deal. At that moment, to Chiron's surprise, Owl continued to address a different matter. Please read this note, sir. Owl pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it over. This was something the temporary flag bearer had left behind when he departed from Samel. This was a matter that definitely couldn't be revealed to the band of the Bowmaster or the Noble Sword. And of course, the author couldn't just tell us about it either. Meanwhile, back with Jin's group, the usual comedians, Dan and Veridin, were sound asleep. Jin had only given them a little sleeping medicine before going to meet the anonymous king, so he wondered, did I give them too much medicine maybe? Then he figured it wasn't too bad to let them rest a bit after the days of being chased down. As he said that, Jin turned to leave, but suddenly noticed something in his jacket pocket. a small piece of paper, and a vial of medicine. Could this letter be from her? Just as I expected, this was the gift Yona left for the youngest. Hello, my little sibling. This is the poisonous elixir. If you drink it and fully open your heart, no lone assassin will be able to kill you anymore. I'll see you again soon. Happy birthday. Without me, you probably forget when your own birthday is. In response, even though it's a bit early, I'm going to give her a gift too. And that's why this letter is being written. Dear Anonymous King, Yona has already given me the poisonous elixir, so please secretly negotiate with my father because it's worth something equivalent to the poisonous elixir. That should be enough to delay Yona's return to the family. After reading these words, Chiron coldly asked if it was true. Yes, sir. In addition to what was written on the paper, he managed to surprise me several more times. I thought Jin's bold move would anger Chiron, but instead it only brought laughter from the Runcandel family head. That knave child managed to trick you? Don't tell me you came up with all these plans just to keep Yona around. Now, it's not just you. I'm involved in this too. I'll officially send you an invitation to visit the Sword Garden and we can discuss this matter later. But for now, Kashmir, I'd like to hear the news you brought. Upon hearing this, Kashmir shared the news he needed to report. It was related to the death of the great master, Kedar Hall, from last month. I need to inform you, sir, this was caused by young master Jin. In that case, those who weren't invited can leave now. I'd like to share a drink with Noble Sword, Chiron said as he slammed the wine bottle in his hand down on the ground. He ordered Talaris and Owl to leave. Even though the archery master pleaded to stay and hear about the son-in-law, the answer was still no. If being gentle didn't work, then it was time to be firm. Talaris threatened, if you don't let me stay, I'll start spreading rumors about your son's strength. At the same time, Jin was loudly cursing someone out. It was clear there was nothing more frustrating than these two comedians who clung on like leeches, refusing to leave no matter how many times they were told to go. Do you have any conscience? We went through hell just to find you, and now we're being tortured. We have to stick with you for a few more days. Wait, aren't you two supposed to be the heirs of your families? Is this really the time to waste with you both just hanging around here? Well, if you're gonna mention it, you're right on the money about Varadin here. You should know that once I become the head of my family, I'll be so busy I won't have time to see anyone. Plus, our families will be rivals, so that's pretty much the end of it. Besides, my position is secure enough that no matter what I do, I'll become the head of the family. No need to worry. As for Ganti, he has his uncle's full support, so it's a done deal for him too. Hearing all this, Jin's got no excuse to keep talking. Unfortunately for me, I'm not like you two, so I'm really busy. Before Jin could finish his sentence, Varadin cut in and now's the time to go all in. Dante agreed, adding, just like Varadin said, once we become heads of our families, we won't be able to meet like this anymore. So shouldn't we make the most of our time before that happens? To become a flag bearer, you need a reputation, right? We'll help you build yours. I'm not sure if it'll turn into anything meaningful, but these two, Dante and Varadin, are already excited about hunting down bad guys. They've even made a list of famous villains like King Mammoth, the remnants of the Dark Sorcerers Guild, or the madman Jack Glow roaming the west of Bemin. But just when he hadn't fully gathered his strength yet, the flame of hope was already snuffed out ahead of him. Hey, can you guys stop talking nonsense already? If you don't stop, these guys are going to start talking about crossing continents at this rate. He didn't know how much time had passed, but suddenly, Jin woke up and realized something was off. When did I fall asleep? He tried to remember. The last thing he recalled was pushing two comedians into the teleportation gate after they'd gotten drunk, and he only remembered until he returned to Tikkun. So what exactly happened? And why does my body feel strangely good? While Jin was wondering about it, India next to him slowly sat up. You're finally awake. Young Master Jin, how do you feel? Did you manage to absorb all the antidote for the poison wine? Then Jin remembered that he had indeed drunk the entire bottle of the wine of 10,000 poisons during his conversation with the Silver Dragon. Did I pass out after drinking the antidote? Yeah, that's right. Young Master, I honestly thought you were dead. Every few minutes, your body would turn dark and then return to normal. But even so, your face still looked really cool. After that, Quick Intel opened the door and stepped in, cutting off the sight of Inya's embarrassed face. Well, it looks like you're finally awake, Quick Intel said. Jin, you've been asleep for 5 whole days. You should know that after taking the antidote to the poison, it usually takes at least a month to recover. But with the natural strength of the Runcandel family, you woke up a lot sooner. Jin was curious about whether anything important had happened while he was out, but it seemed like there was nothing major. The only thing worth mentioning was that Kashmir, who had left not long ago, had returned. Gilly had also been away for a bit. She received an urgent summons from her family, so she used a teleportation gate to head back to Runcandel early this morning. After finishing her words, Inya stood up and walked out with the Silver Dragon. I'll go tell everyone that the young master is awake. Not long after, Jin was presented with a huge jar of poison. It didn't take much thought to realize that Murakami wanted Jin to drink it all just to test the effectiveness of the antidote. It wasn't anything unusual though, just a little congratulations on waking up healthy. With those warm words in mind, Jin had no choice but to drink the entire jar of poison. So how are you feeling now? With the excited look on Murakami's face, Jin mentioned that his stomach only felt a little warmer than usual. But what was that thing earlier? It wasn't until after asking that Jin really started to feel confused. That was a bit of poison I had jet buy from the black market. Specifically, if it's under 7 stars, just one small sip would kill you instantly. Quick and Tell wasn't too surprised by the reckless antics of the Black Dragon. Still, from what had just happened, it was clear that the universal antidote had been absorbed completely. If everything's gone well, it's time for you to keep your promise, right? What Quick and Tell was referring to was Jin's promise to help Enya train. The Silver Dragon could only assist her in theory, so Jin was supposed to help her practice. One day, Enya would have to defeat her opponent, but right now, she lacked real combat experience. Jin asked if it was really necessary for Enya to do that. Hey, Jin Runcandel, everyone here is your companion. That means that in the future, when you fight your brothers and sisters, we'll be fighting by your side. Even then, do you still think Enya doesn't need to fight? Jin understood the underlying meaning as soon as he heard it. It sounded like Quick and Tell was scolding him, but it was also clear she wanted Enya to hear it. Don't worry, I've already decided on our next destination. Jin explained that he would improve his tide reversal magic by fighting against a wizard and he could bring Enya along. As soon as Enya heard half of that, her eyes lit up and she ran over. Getting to go alone with young Master Jin? This was basically like a date, right? Meanwhile, in the swordsmanship training garden, I heard something interesting happen in Samel. If you have anything to explain, now's the time, Joshua. I'll ask you again. Because of you, Yona had to delay her return to the family. Do you have anything to say about this? Well, I only acted for the benefit of the family, Joshua tried to explain. Before he could finish his sentence, the head of the family, Chiron, slapped him hard. What the hell do you think you're doing? Stand up straight, Joshua. Despite being slapped by his father, Joshua kept his composure and stood tall, refusing to show weakness. But then, a relentless barrage of slaps from Chiron came down one after another, and Joshua still couldn't figure out what was going on. At that point, Joshua's face looked like a mess. Even the wet nurse, Gilly, and the anonymous king, who were just watching, felt bad for him. Take off that black armor. You're no longer worthy of wearing it. Along with Chiron's words, Joshua also followed his instructions. He took off his shirt and removed the heavy black armor that had weighed him down. As for someone like him, a worthless second in command of the family and the next heir, I honestly don't want to talk about how he was defeated by the youngest member, someone who was only a temporary flag bearer. But there is one thing I've mentioned many times and I'll ask again. Tell me, what is it? As soon as the question was asked, Joshua mumbled 2 words, Yona. Father said never to touch Yona. Of course, that answer was spot on, and as a reward, it was followed by a punch full of love. Joshua could no longer stand tall with his arrogance. He collapsed at his knees, his body racked with pain. The anonymous king owl standing nearby could clearly see what was happening. Though it seemed like Chiron was teaching his son a lesson, the owl thought this meeting wasn't really meant for Joshua. It was more a reminder for Chiron. If anything were to happen to Yona again, even if it involved the next head of the Runcandel family, the consequences would be disastrous. I know you never had any plans to oppose me, I said. That's why this armor has remained intact since your mother gave it to you 17 years ago. You truly are a coward. Now listen carefully to what I'm about to say. The day I summon you after I return from the Black Sea, I will strip you of your title as flag bearer in this family. Now get out of my sight. With that, Joshua was helped out of the meeting room by the Black Knights. Obviously, such a significant event couldn't go unnoticed by the other children. Mary stood nearby, mocking her brother's pathetic state. She made no effort to hide her disgust, laughing out loud in a way that only fueled Joshua's anger even more. Back inside the meeting room, the head of the family, Chiron, called for Gilly. He asked about the youngest's recent behavior. Is he doing well? Chiron asked. Gilly replied, the young master just left Samel a few days ago. He's had the all-poison drink and is resting now. As she spoke, Chiron looked at her and said, take this to Jin. I want to make sure you report everything that happened today to him. That's the only reason I called you back, and the only reason you're here. Gilly bowed and promised to pass on everything to the young master for the sake of the Runcandel family and the young master himself. Switching scenes to Tikkun, Gilly had just finished telling Jin everything. Jin, looking puzzled, asked, even the anonymous king was there, but more importantly, did father personally punish Joshua? Gilly quickly reenacted the head of the family's knockout punch. Though the beating was a bit violent, it was so satisfying, young master. She also handed him the reward. Lord Joshua lost it in his rage and will face discipline soon. By the way, 30 years ago, this black armor was forged by a legendary blacksmith named Pecan Minch. It became a symbol of war when Uncle Red wore it to secure his 5th consecutive victory over the Zipple family. After thinking for a moment, Jin guessed this might be some kind of test his father had set for him. His father probably wanted him to be different from Joshua. While Joshua had spent 17 years shining brightly, his father seemed to want Jin to return to a battle-worn state, like a flag bearer temporarily stripped of their armor. Not only that, but the meeting was probably a warning for Mr. Owl. His father likely wanted to remind him not to ever think about using Yona to negotiate. If the next head of the family tried that, they'd be kicked out for sure. But if it were someone anonymous, they'd definitely be destroyed. Of course, Jin himself was also part of the warning. Jin added, and now Gilly is finally starting to understand the deeper meaning behind the clan leader's actions and is getting freaked out. But the thing I'm most curious about is, why is my father going this far? Is this some sort of compensation for his most unfortunate child? Then Jin remembered what Yona had said earlier. Everyone has their own secrets, don't they? And so do I. It meant Yona still had a lot of secrets she hadn't shared yet. Up ahead, Gilly asked where Jin was planning to go next. I heard you've made a decision about that. Yes, Jin replied. I'm planning to go to a place related to magic. I have a plan to deal with the rebels of the Black Magic Society. This group of mages was formed over 200 years ago. Even though they don't have many members, they've managed to survive until today. But don't worry too much. Enya will be coming with me, and I plan to develop the time reversal magic while we're there. A few days later, in the southern region of the Bemet Empire, this place brought back old memories. I once thought I would never return to Bemet. What should I do next, young master? The person speaking was none other than Miss Enya, disguised as an old man. But before she could finish her sentence, Jin pulled her into a nearby alley. Excuse me, young master, but why did you suddenly act like that? Do you forget why we're here? Jin replied. Of course I know. But in that case, please don't use my real name. I'm sure you understand what I mean, Miss Enya. Just a few words, and Enya's face looked like she was about to get married and have children. How could the young master speak such sweet words? Miss Enya, the Black Sorcerers Guild was an organization known for its golden age 200 years ago. And true to its name, they worshipped dark magic from the shadow world. During its golden age, the Black Sorcerers Guild had a massive influence across the continent, plunging everything into a state of terror. The one who ended that chaotic era was Ryle Zipple, the first and only woman of the Zipple family to wield the legendary first annihilation of Eternal Flame. She killed the powerful leader of the Black Sorcerers Guild back then. Ryle Zipple, who had once been advised by Solderit that Jin should follow her path in his previous life, of course, only after he became stronger and could pass her test. Back in the present, Jin and Enya were still hanging around somewhere in Bemet. Young Master has known that all the remnants of the Dark Sorcerers Guild are bad people. From what I've gathered, it seems they've been kidnapping children. That's probably why most people here have such sad looks on their faces. Jin replied bluntly, the main cause is probably the nobles surprising Enya. For someone like Enya, who had lived in the capital, she surely knew that not many countries had a better public order than Bemet. While they could quickly clean up criminals, they often turned a blind eye to organized crime. Both the victims and the criminals often became tools used by the nobles to gain more fame. The reason I think the Dark Sorcerers Guild still exists is so that the mages from the academy can act. Enya asked, if what you're saying is true, doesn't that mean the mages from the academy are coming here? That's exactly right. However, those old men are usually very lazy, so they'll probably take them some time to get here. At the same time, the carriages carrying the mages had arrived. They were from the Magic Academy, and the nobles were already here. Quickly, to the excitement and admiration of the countless people gathered, the mages from the Magic Academy lined up on the street. Those are the mages. The capital has finally sent mages here. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Jin had a different thought. Of course, these people had arrived faster than he expected, and he needed to avoid them as much as possible. Everyone from the academy had a disgusting greed for power, so things would not end well. If an outsider got involved, everything would get really unpleasant. Jin quickly leaned over to Enya and whispered, all those people will die. They cannot be allowed to erase the Black Mage Guild. That night, Enya was impressed by the lavish meal Jin had just ordered. Young master, is it really okay to order such expensive dishes like this? She asked. Of course. Though I'm not as rich as my friends, I have my ways. Miss Enya can open an account at one of the banks in Tikan. I'll give you some pocket money then. But what about what you said earlier? About the part where Jin said that all the mages for the Magic Academy would die. He explained that it was just his guess. They were too young and weak to wipe out the Black Mage Guild. Enya thought differently. All those students were trained at a high level and had reached 4-star rank. The other students might be weaker, but they weren't a problem. That's why this was happening. The criminals in the Black Mage Guild were experienced and had lived in the shadows for years. Meanwhile, the students, though well-trained, lacked real-world experience. According to what Hugh Fester had gathered, the Black Mage Guild had around 50 members, most of whom were 4-star mages, while the Academy had only sent 30 students. So even with high-ranking mages from both sides, the Black Mage Guild still had a significant advantage. Just as they were talking, a loud voice came from the table behind them. I'm really pissed off right now. Some students were laughing about the Lord's behavior earlier that morning. His gesture of rubbing his hands together and then touching his face had looked so ridiculous, like a pig trying to beg. But the old men were saying the food here is really good, right, boss? After eavesdropping for a while, Jin decided it was time to leave. After all, attracting attention or being noticed by these guys wasn't going to end well. However, despite his call, Inya remained sitting completely still. Of course, she was replaying the memories of when she was bullied at the academy. These three were the masterminds behind it. Hey, Inya, don't tell me it's them. Right after that, though she hesitated for a moment, Inya nodded in agreement. Yeah, they're the ones who bullied me back at the academy. Now we have one more reason not to deal with them. With that, Jin stood up abruptly and walked straight toward the three students, ignoring their questions. Who are you and why are you looking at us and laughing? You two don't seem like servants. Hey, answer me now. Don't tell me you're part of the Dark Mage Association, are you? Why do you want to know about me? Jin responded casually, while the three students overheard and couldn't help but burst into laughter. How dare you, commoner? Fine, I'll admit I was rude, so now I'll ask you more politely. Which organization are you with? Why are you moving so slowly? The leader spoke as he pointed his magic staff toward Jin. You better answer correctly, or I'll drag both of you out of here and interrogate you. The owner of the shop, seeing the situation about to escalate into a fight, hurriedly ran over and said, Please remain calm, sir. They told me they're here as tourists, and instead of fighting here, would you mind stepping outside before you take action? Obviously, right after that, the owner received a blow to his stomach, causing him to fall to the ground. How dare you interrupt me? The man shouted. I think the South is lacking in proper manners when it comes to welcoming nobles. Before he could finish speaking, Jin's fist collided with the jabbering student's jaw with full force. Hey, Dan, what the hell are you doing? The two lackeys, seeing their leader being hit, quickly slammed the tables and chairs, shouting loudly, Don't run away, you bastard. However, just moments later, the two of them thought better of it. With the gentle closing of the door by Jin, the fate of all three was sealed. Special Operations, Bemin Division, 1st Brigade, 3rd Squad, all you students pay attention. It wasn't just Inya who was shocked by these words. Even the two students in front thought they were hearing things. What nonsense are you talking? Special Operations? How dare you impersonate them, you crazy bastard? Jin didn't say much. He simply raised 2 fingers and did a quick gesture. As he moved, the 2 students suddenly realized something was off. A blue flame quickly engulfed their bodies, causing them intense pain, and it felt as though they could barely breathe. Jin looked at the pathetic group inside. You all are making such a big deal over a little bit of magic. You useless fools actually dared to bully Inya before. As he spoke, he glanced over at Inya, who was still shrinking back in fear. Now get up. If you keep overreacting like this, I'll drag you all to the interrogation room, he warned. Jin was frustrated. Not only had these 3 disturbed innocent civilians, but they'd also messed up the work of the Special Task Force. Think about it. What if this news gets back to your family and the academy? He said, shaking his head. The young man with blue hair, who had just been threatened, began to sob and begged for a chance to make things right. If you let me, I'll do anything. Just please don't tell my family about this. Jin, ever the merciful one, decided not to make things harder for him. Instead, he said, I'll give you a task. You may not know this, but we were sent here to monitor the operation to eliminate the Dark Magic Society. Because something went wrong, I have no choice but to ask for your help to complete this mission. To put it simply, I'll pretend to be your servant and observe things from your side. Now, will you cooperate? Of course, the 3 students immediately agreed. Their lives were on the line. Everything else could wait. After everything was settled, Jin turned to leave, calling out, pack up, and head back to the base. He glanced at Inya, causing her to jump in surprise. Jin leaned in close and whispered, How do you think my acting was? Now, it's your turn. Go on, Miss Inya. Although she felt a little shy, Inya knew there was no better chance for revenge than this moment. So like a true villain, Inya rolled up her sleeves and started scolding the 3 students until they nearly wet their pants. You idiots, what the hell do you think you're doing? Move faster. Don't you know we're busy? Apologize to the owner and clean up this mess now. Inya also played the role of a responsible person by making sure everything was properly compensated, even though the money wasn't hers. 5 days later, on October 22, 1796, the group from the Magic Academy had begun their mission. A professor stood at the front and announced, Right now, the full-scale purge operation begins. All cadets of the academy must understand and follow every order from the lead wizard of each team. Down below, some students whispered to each other, "Our opponents have a 7-star wizard. With their strength, I'm not sure we'll make it through this." But others disagreed. Still, those dark wizards are just remnants. If anything happens, Master Orton will step in. Of course, Enya was among the group disguised as a servant. She couldn't help but think how optimistic these students were. There were nearly 50 enemies hiding in the forest, and they were still so calm. They clearly didn't understand how bad the situation really was. Although no signs had been found yet, the dark sorcerers must have been feeling confident. As usual, they would send scouts to assess the strength of their enemies. While deep in thought, a loud scream suddenly broke the silence. "We're under attack." Up ahead, an orc monster from a nearby tribe charged into the middle of the mage squad. The lead mage quickly tried to calm everyone down. "Stay calm." He ordered the first team to launch a counterattack with magic, while the second team set up a magical barrier. In no time, the Academy's magic forces had defeated the charging monster. It lay groaning on the ground, its massive mouth wide open. On the other side, the students were laughing as if they'd just won a huge battle, but the commanding mage was puzzled. Did the dark sorcerers tame these orcs? If so, they're too weak. "Alert everyone, we'll rest here for a while." The commander issued the order, much to Jin's surprise. He quickly moved forward and said to the blue-haired student, "I advise the commander not to stop here. This place is a perfect spot for an ambush." There was some resistance, but hearing about the interrogation room, the blue-haired student had no choice but to obey. "Sir Orton, I don't think we should stay here." But that guy wouldn't just listen to a bunch of rookie students. "If you're worried, feel free to set up a protective barrier and take a rest." Jin now had a vague understanding of what the dark mages were after. If he guessed right, those weep orcs were probably just there to make the enemy drop their guard. But he chose such a wide open space like this to rest, which made things tricky. Even a 7-star mage would have a hard time keeping track of everything in a place like this. Lamb's hair moved slightly as he asked, "Does that mean Orton is suspicious?" "You can ask, but don't be so formal with your own servants," Jin replied. The two subordinates added, "We saw Orton eating meat this morning. He's always been vegetarian before." Elsewhere, standing in front of a cave entrance, two mages were discussing their next move. "This is their main base. We need to set up a protective barrier before entering. Captain, stay here with teams 4 and 5, and once the barriers are set, join up with the other teams and follow us," one of the mages instructed. With the plan laid out, Orton's teams 1 and 2 were the vanguard, heading into the enemy base. Meanwhile, the students were chatting amongst themselves. "I heard the dark mages have about 50 people. Are they really planning to turn this place into a fortress?" "Well, no matter what they do, Orton will take care of it in no time," another student said confidently. Just as I mentioned, the consequences hit right away. In front of the cave, a huge hole suddenly burst open, and standing there before the group of students was a high-level orc, an orc charging out from behind the wall. We were ambushed. "Master Orton, what should we do next?" Another student quickly ran up to ask, but little did they know this was just the beginning of the surprise. "What should you all do?" "Just stay quiet and obedient and become our little experiment, of course." "Holy crap, are you serious?" Before the students could even recover from the shock, Orton, with his bright, toothy grin, fake commanded the orcs to rush in and capture all of them. Anya quickly shouted, "Master, we need to go now." While the imposter was still enjoying his little axe, suddenly a flash of blue light appeared. Something totally unexpected. A massive magical sphere had formed. "What is this? Huh? This can't be happening." The fake wizard stood there, mouth agape in disbelief. Meanwhile, Jin turned to Enya and said, "Get ready for a shift in plans. Stick close to me. It's about to get a lot tougher." On the other side, the wizard had finally realized what kind of magic was in front of him. "Don't tell me. Is this the tide reversal spell from Kedar Hall?" Jin remained calm, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword as he continued to channel his magic. Then, with a swift movement, he raised the sword. The moment he did, every monster in the area was instantly defeated. "Oh, looks like a few of you are still holding on. I'm guessing you two are around 8-star level, right?" As Jin spoke, the two mages in front of him were coughing violently, their mouths filled with blood. One collapsed right after, while the other, furious, looked ready to pop a vein. He glared at Jin and demanded, "Are you a disciple of Kedar Hall? How is it that you can use tide reversal magic?" Jin didn't respond, only smiling. He seemed like someone who knew exactly what was going on. "You must be pretty excited after that sneak attack, huh?" The bald man continued to shout. "I can tell you're only a 7-star mage. My name is Rolled Joe. You'd better listen closely, because that's the last thing you'll ever hear in your life." Jin seemed unbothered. He simply replied, "I've heard your brother is an expert in earth magic. I'm guessing you're the one who created this artificial cave, right?" It's impressive. Praising him, Roljo laughed even louder. If you figure that out, then let me formally inform you that there are 9 more powerful wizards above me. This means that even if you somehow manage to escape, the Dark Magic Guild will hunt you down for the rest of your life. However, since I'm a generous person, I'll make you an offer. Join the Dark Magic Guild. If you agree to work under me, I'll make sure you rise through the ranks quickly. Meanwhile, while Roljo was busy lecturing, Jin had already started making his move. With a snap of his fingers, this time the tide reversal orb grew even stronger. After that, all that could be heard was the old monk's shrill scream. Enya wasn't sorry for cutting ties with this guy. Though he was a pretty skilled wizard, his mouth was just as noisy. I can't believe it. You're amplifying the tide reversal magic by adding other energy sources to it. That's the darkness. Don't tell me. You're a disciple of Kedar Hall and a contractor of Solderit, aren't you? Jin knocked the monk unconscious with a single strike. To him, this guy was nothing more than a so-called 8-star wizard. Just when this was over, something else came up. From behind, a few orcs, who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, began to crawl out. Before Jin even had to lift a finger, those monsters were already scattered all over the place. Are you okay, young Master Jin? The one who took action was none other than Miss Enya. Actually, she didn't intend to take down those monsters just now, Enya explained, shivering. I panicked when the orcs suddenly charged at us and, well, I kind of lost control. Still, thanks to her quick thinking, Jin found himself trusting her more. Enya was doing better than he had expected. It seemed like this was her first time dealing with such creatures, but she handled it well and didn't panic. However, if anyone thought the situation was over, they were wrong. Suddenly, the cave shook violently like it was about to collapse. Ahead of them, a new monster appeared. It was staring at the scene in front of it, clearly surprised. Looks like things have gotten pretty chaotic around here. Now tell me, human, was all this you're doing?